We'll start again. All right. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Welcome everybody to what feels like the first real day of summer. This is a joint study session between the council and the the council and the planning commission. So with that, can we do roll call?
Yes, starting with Councilmember Walter, President, Councilmember Haskell.
Here.
Vice Mayor Hefty,
Here.
Mayor Taylor.
Present.
We have a quorum. And for Planning Commission, Commissioner Vatra.
Here.
Commissioner Targ is absent. Commissioner Morse.
Here.
Vice Chair Krasinski.
Here.
Chair Brothers.
I'm here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. So I'd like to remind everybody that there's no decisions being made tonight. This is a study session. The goal as we go through this is to give staff some direction. And then staff's going to incorporate our comments from tonight, public comments up through June 30th, I believe. And then revise the document, bring it back to the Planning Commission, and then from the Planning Commission will come back to council. So I just wanted to give people sort of the general context. So with that, I'd like to open oral communications. Is there anybody who wants to speak on something that's not on this agenda? Rita? Oh, okay. Okay, fine. All right. So Rita, so I think I'm going to get, based on that, I think I'm going to do you mind? I mean, I'm okay.
If it's point of order, you have to take it.
Well,
Robert's
not,
Rule of Order.
I don't think, member public to do, member,
Well, that's a
but,
fairness.
but anyway, yeah, no, go ahead. No.
The point of
No.
order question, this
We're-
document that's part of the packet, there's a lot of acronyms and color coding, but I didn't see a key
Okay.
telling me what those acronyms are, what they mean, and what the color codes mean. If someone has that, they can share it. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. No.
Fair enough.
Okay, so moving on to the regular agenda. The first one is receiving an update from the Resilience Planning Town Council Ad Hoc Subcommittee. I don't know if that's exactly what our title was, but it's close enough. So this is a subcommittee that Rebecca and I were on. And you saw in the council packet, basically a report back from us. I'm not going to go back and read it. I do apologize. Somehow when it got into the packet, the first time half of it was missing. So the whole discussion is missing. So as long as you got the more recent one, there's sort of red line, the stuff that was supposed to be there.
I did not either.
Okay. Did you get the latest council packet?
I did, but I didn't open it because I didn't know there were changes.
got it by Friday. Okay, well, in any case, there's more discussion. I can speak, and then again, this is just to provide some input and you can read it unless people feel like they want me to read the pieces that are here. But it was basically some discussion on how the council or how the subcommittee was. And then it talked a little about the safety and resilience list. And there was also in the packet a description of the safety and resilience list. So it basically captured most of that. The goal for tonight was just to, because we're going to be talking about the safety element, and this is sort of adjunct to the safety element, was just to quickly talk about this. So we had this in the background. And the idea of the safety and resilience list was, this is not a commitment on the part of the council or committees, but the goal was to get safety related tasks in a place that we would sort of remember it was there, and then make sure that periodically it was reviewed, and that we need as a council to come up with a policy on how to deal with this. And there's a proposed policy here, but that's not for tonight. That's just the proposed. So does that make enough sense for people to give it context?
Are you going to ask for comments?
I can ask for, I'm just trying to get the general sense, because I mean, Judith looks confused.
I am confused.
Yeah.
So I read the initial packet. I am worried. I'm trying to call up right now what the red line is, and I don't have it. So I'm not feeling very comfortable that I'm going to make informed comments that are still relevant.
Okay. well,
So how do I locate that? I'll
It-
go ahead and.
You go to the town website, the
Oh, it's on the
calendar,
website. Okay.
and then you go to tonight's special meeting and you download the agenda. You would get it that way, or Veronica sent out the links to the updated packet. So either direction will get you there. I mean, I'm happy just to, I can read it. I mean, it's, what got left out was the discussion part. And so I'll read literally what's here.
Okay.
The town safety element of our general plan is the overarching view of our approach to the town's safety priorities. The safety element, when paired with a set of safety and resilient initiatives, begins to address in a concrete way the significant safety issues facing the town. The safety, hey, Mary, can I ask you guys to, like, if I'm going to read this, let's not have two conversations. Thank you. The safety and resilience list provides a more detailed oriented view. The safety element of the town of Portola Valley's general plan was last updated July 28, 2010. The first public draft safety element was circulated for public review in October 2022. The town received comments from the public, key town committees, including Geologic Safety Committee, Wildfire Preparedness Committee, Community Planning and Assistance for Wildfire, CPAW, excuse me, I'm trying to do this quickly, Sustainability Committee, and the Emergency Preparedness Committee. All the comments have been reviewed, and many have been incorporated into the safety element as policies. The remaining comments have been moved to the safety and resilience list. And then the attached safety and resilience list is a first draft. The final list will be available shortly. So that's all that was missing. And then a recommendation, and this is what I was referring to, is we recommend that the town council formalize the safety and resilience list and an associated process at a future council meeting. So that's the full extent that was missing.
Thank you.
Okay. And then, if you scroll down in the packet, there's a sort of description of the safety and resilience list with the various descriptions of the different titles that are theirs. And again, I just brought, Rebecca and I just wanted to get that here tonight. So people had an idea. This is definitely a draft. So there's a lot of duplication because this was a very compressed, I was going out of town for a week. This is all very compressed. So treat the actual list itself as very much a draft. So with that, excuse me, let me open up for clarifying questions. And if there aren't any, then I'll go to the public and then I'll come back and we can have a quick discussion among us.
I would like to ask you, since it is the duty of the planning commission to maintain the general plan, and we've never seen this resilience list, how you see the list going to the planning commission to begin with, and secondly, how you see it fitting in to the safety element once we even get to that point. I think it's, in my quick review, and I haven't done a detailed review, apparently duplicative, and for a town that doesn't even have a 5-year budget, an awful lot of work. And I worry, my final comment as a lawyer, I worry about putting things on a piece of paper that raises expectations. The classic example is you say you're going to replace the traffic light, and you don't, and there's an accident, and you're a defendant.
Okay.
So I read this and I see a lot of things, oh, we're going to do this, and I cringe.
And-
So those are my questions.
Okay, and I would refer you to the process for maintaining the list. I tried to clearly spell out how this list was going to get maintained and sort of what the purpose of it was.
You did say it would be an adjunct to the safety element, so that was what's the base of my question.
Right. And I think it's meant to be, in the last draft, we got a lot of comments on the safety element. And the goal was not all of those belonged in the safety element, in the opinion of staff. But Rebecca and I didn't want to lose those. We wanted to make sure that those kind of comments are still available for people to review. So again, the goal of the list in broad strokes is hopefully, and the council is going to have to come up with this policy. But the proposal was that annually a subcommittee reviews this and makes suggestions to the council for things that should be budgeted and basically give them staff direction. And the other use is that the committees, when they're trying to decide their priorities for the next year, could look at this list and say, oh, this is something that we want to take on. But there's nothing on this list that's meant to be a commitment on the town's part. This is a laundry list, if you will, of things that we might want to work on.
But I still don't understand how that, let's assume some year from now, we have a safety element and you're independently out there running top lines on the items. How does that fit into staff time implementing a safety element that's required by state law and will at that point have been adopted? I don't understand where the rubber hits the road on that intersection.
Well, the things that are on here tend to be fairly detailed tasks, and the safety element tends to be fairly broad. And the goal was not to sort of reopen the safety element on an annual basis. The safety element's meant to be a document that lasts kind of 5 years to maybe even 10 years. So again, it's just a tool and council will decide on policy for, implementing or not. I mean, the council may decide not to do that. Other clarifying questions?
Yeah, I have one.
Yeah.
Respectfully, like obviously this is a extensive list, 15-ish pages. And as I recall, the original directive was to prepare a draft list and report back. So this is the
list.
draft list.
Right. And like I said, because of the time constraints of this meeting, what's the reason that list is so long right now is we attempted to take every comment from the last safety element draft that was made and dump it into this list. Rebecca and I plan to go back through this list, dedupe it, clean it up some before we bring a real draft back to the council.
So, I mean, I am concerned that it would then further slow down our safety element adoption.
I believe this is decoupled from the safety. This is not the same process. This stuff's not going to go into the safety element. This is a list that we maintain with some policy behind it or not. I mean, again, the council may decide not to have a policy, not maintain it. But this is not the safety element. This is not meant to replace the safety element.
With all due respect, you might want to consider renaming it so that that's clear.
Okay, so let's wait on comments. We're getting any other clarifying questions? Okay, so with that, I'll open up to public comment. Is there any public comment? Veronica, online?
There is one raised hand online from
Okay.
MJ.
Go ahead, MJ.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I had a few questions. First of all, when is the safety element due?
Okay, so
Is-
right now we're talking about the safety and resilience list, not the safety. So we will get to in the next agenda item, the safety element.
Okay, but the safety and resilience list, you're saying it's going to be like an addendum in the safety element?
No, I'm
And
saying it's another list that the council still needs to review and create a policy for.
Okay, well then, so you only want questions right now about the safety and resilience list?
I'm really just looking for public comment on the list and particularly the sort of the concept of the list.
Okay, so let me just ask this. I've seen earlier drafts of the list. This table, this chart in here, is it the same list? It's just formatted differently?
I'm
The
not sure
last-
which,
The last version I saw was the one you guys passed around, I think in March or February or March or something.
so
and-
it's, yes, so it has a lot of the same things.
Okay, but I would still need to read this whole thing to see how it differs.
Well, if the council agrees on a policy, this will be the list. There won't be yet another list.
Yeah, no, I mean in reference to the list that I originally saw. That's what I'm asking. Because, the wildfire committee based its whole goals on the stuff that came out of that list. I just want to know if this list has been added to.
Well, it's definitely been added to, but I don't think
Oh,
it in any way
okay.
has subtracted from what wildfire preparedness is trying to do.
Yeah, no, it's not the subtractions I'm worried about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Craig, I had actually a question before you went to public comment. So
Can I finish public comment though, since I've opened it, and I'll come back to you?
well, it's a question for the attorney. What is the right thing to do?
Okay.
So I was in the process of looking at my list of questions and then Craig went to public comment. That's fine. But if I now have questions, do I just hold it till public comment's done? That's all.
I would say discretion of the mayor whether to,
Oh, wait.
Yeah, just, because I think we can wrap that pretty quick, and then I'll go to you first.
Yeah,
Okay.
fine.
Anybody else online?
Yes. Two more hands. The first one just says Zoom user.
Welcome, Zoom user.
Hi, it's Dana Breen. Can you hear me?
We can
Am I
hear you,
on?
Dana. Yeah, welcome.
I feel confused all of a sudden at the beginning of this meeting. I mean, why is there a time constraint on this meeting? What is the issue? So, I mean, I thought that we were talking about the changes to the general plan. Anyway, I feel confused about what the process is here. And I
Well, we're-
also like to say, because this is a change to the general plan, I'm so surprised that Ed Holland's committee, all these other committees have not studied what came out. ASCC didn't study it. So I hope we have an opportunity. I hope that there's going to be a lot of time here for us to study this stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. And again, I would remind people that the safety and resilience list is a safety element, but we'll get to it. Okay, any other online?
Yes, from Christy.
Go ahead, Christy, welcome.
Thank you. I think what MJ was saying earlier is of concern. Anytime there's changes to a previous document, the public should see a red line of what was added and what was deleted, so we don't have to compare them side by side. So that's of concern. And I agree with that all committees should get these things prior to. Maybe you're trying to get in the first read, but we want the first read to be our committees and to have input. And then we want to look at the document and then present it. So something is odd with this process. I agree. Thank you.
Thank you.
Already off schedule.
Yeah, I'm doing the best I can.
Understood. Friendly
Veronica,
reminder.
anybody else online?
No, that's all the comments.
Anybody in the schoolhouse? Rita, please.
Yes, I've used project management in the past, the different software where you are moving forward with your project and then you use different colors to show that you've done progress. And a lot of these items on here are in future tense. And I know from attending many, many meetings that some of these things are in the process or they've been done, but it just seems the way it's tensed that we don't have anything going on in our beautiful town. And we have to. So I just have a concern about this particular document and what it represents, for our town, for somebody from the outside looking in. And a lot of these things cost money that we don't have, but they're kind of done. So it looks like we don't have anything and we don't have money to do these things. That's my comment.
Okay, thank you. All right, anyone else in the schoolhouse, please? Nan?
Oh, I screwed up. Oh, well.
Yeah, so we're talking about your safety and resilience list, which I take it is the lowest level of detail, sort of project level, which falls out from the safety element, which goes goals, policies. And then there's no, Linda says no. The list of implementation actions at the back of the safety element is still at a higher level than the safety and resilience list. So I guess I'm confused between the implementation actions in the safety element and the safety and resilience list items.
Okay, I mean, we're trying to do comments and not, I'm trying to be careful not to go too much into answering questions, but one is meant to be a general list of things that people are interested in potentially doing. The other is stuff that we intend to do as sort of policy. So they're different in that way. And
Meaning items that we think we can actually accomplish in the next, discrete period of time, rather than things that we think should happen in some longer period of time, or
which are we out of our time or what? That's our fine. Again, we're getting into back and forth, which I'd like to avoid because we're already kind of over time on this item. So, but Nan, I'd be happy to talk to you more afterwards. Okay. Anybody else in the schoolhouse? All right. So with that, I'm going to close public comment. I'm going to come back to Judith first.
Yeah. So my question is a little more procedural because, and I will have comments as well, but the question is more like, this is a list. Are we supposed to be saying where we might have some concerns? And will that be considered in the next draft? Or is it going to be assumed that we're not commenting substantively at all tonight, and therefore we're free to make any comment at all when we next see it? So I just want to know what we're obligated to be doing tonight versus if and when it comes back. Because I have substantive questions and concerns, but they may be beside the point if we are completely free to make any comments in the next time it comes up.
Right.
And there's, to be clear, I want there to be no implication that there's, a predisposed assumption of acceptance coming out of tonight.
That is correct. So you are going to be completely free when the council takes this up in the future to talk about the policy and the list.
Okay.
The only reason we brought this up tonight was we were asked to bring it up because there are things that aren't in the safety element, but that people had made comments in a previous one. And we wanted people to know that they weren't lost, that information wasn't gone.
Mhm.
That's sort of the safety and resilience list was sort of part of that, but it's going to come back to the council and the council can decide that this list shouldn't exist. That's fine as well. So there's
Or
nothing.
be modified, right?
Well, I mean, it could be modified. It could be decided that we don't want you to do it at all. I mean, the process has not been decided. We were just saying, look, here's the direction that the subcommittee has been headed. So it was just meant to be a report out to say, this is the direction the subcommittee is headed. Okay. Yeah, please.
So is the main motivation for this list to be separate from the safety element itself? The fact that the safety element is maybe difficult to modify and not modified very often, or is it these are things that didn't make it into the safety element? We're trying to keep track of them.
So kind of yes to all the above. So the safety element is something that you don't want to keep modifying the general plan if you don't have to, and it's an element of the general plan. And the list was meant to be, if a committee has something that they think is important that they don't want to get lost, we should be able to put it on there. It's not a commitment by the council or the town or the committee, but when we review it annually, we should say, oh, I wonder if we should start working on this now. So that was more what it was. It's just kind of a placeholder for ideas. Okay. Other comments, Linda?
I really want to be clear that this is
Comments?
not part of the safety element. It's not required by the state law to be in the safety element. It has not been reviewed or looked at by the planning commission. We saw it just as soon as you guys did. And to kind of correlate it to the safety element, in my mind, I guess the council can do what they want to do, but it's not what the law says. The element does have implementation plans, which can be laid out on annual or weekly or monthly or decadally manners. So I think it needs to be really clear that this is something from a subcommittee from the town council and not to be confused with the topic of tonight, which is the safety element.
Thank you. Other comments? So let me, I'll go on this side and then I'll come back to you guys. Go ahead.
Yeah, yes, thank you for everything. And just to be clear, we did kind of, it was, the questioning period was a little bit unclear as well, because it was more of the, like the process question instead of the question on the documents, I feel like. So I will echo what Chair Brothers said, in terms of the safety element has very mandated aspects that need to be included. And so like, you know, there's been a long time request to get the safety element out the door. And I think it's great that we have this other laundry list to consider. But I do hope that we concentrate on getting, while all of us are together and we've started early, I do hope that we can get to the safety element so that we can make sure that we consider that deeply. Thank you.
That's where we're headed. All right, Mary?
Thank you. I do really like the concept of the safety and resilience list, and as being a living document that actually all of us can look at, see where whether our concerns are actually on there, and amplify them if they need to be, or elevate them if it's as the interest of the community and it's possible. So I think it's a great tool that you've developed. Thank you very much. And it certainly makes me feel more comfortable moving ahead with the safety element. The relationship between the list and the safety element does need to be clarified eventually, but not tonight. And I think this is a separate presentation and should remain so. So I'm pleased with the direction that you're going.
Okay, thank you. Judith?
Well, if you're looking for comments, like holistic comments, not line item comments, I do echo some concerns. I mean, obviously a lot of work done. It's great to have a repository of potential items to pick up in the future. But a lot of these have significant cost implications for the individuals and for the town. It's unclear what the cost benefit would be. And some of these are policy decisions for the council. So I do anticipate a robust discussion when it comes forward again. And from a personal point of view, I am retaining all rights to make any comments in a future meeting. But do think that it's helpful they have a repository to frame up.
Okay, thank you. Karen?
I feel a little out of place speaking to this because I'm not a council member, but I do think it needs a lot of cleanup. There are a lot of these goals are extremely vague and about communication, and I'm not sure when you'd ever know it was done.
Right.
Or who would do it. And I found 44 of those. And so I would suggest a second draft.
Yeah, and which is definitely going to be in progress. So, Bonnie, any comment?
Yeah, I guess I feel like the list is serving too many functions, and I think it's confusing. It makes it confusing of what exactly it's a list of. And yeah, it just is very long. I realize there's some redundancy, but even after eliminating it, just feel like it's going to be very long. Like if we had a list of, these are the 10, 20 things like we're going to work on this year. I guess it's not trying to serve. It seems like it's partially serving that, but then serving other things. Maybe it's
Yeah, it's not meant to serve the purpose of this is what we're working on. That's not the intent. The intent was to gather people's requests, and that annually those requests would be looked at, decide if we would start working on it. So I think it's sort of a step back from things that we're actually working on. I mean, unless a committee or the council decides to act on one of these, it just sits on the list. That's its home. That's where it's going to live. It really is just a repository. I think that's a good description of it from Judith. I mean, that's it. It's just a repository. It has no actionable Unless somebody takes one of those things and turns it into an action item, it's just a repository.
Okay, if it's clearly, I guess maybe my comment is that maybe it could be more clear that that's what it is.
Okay, great. Thank you. Doug?
I guess I'd echo Karen's point. I think it's a good idea to have this list and have the repository. There is obvious overlap with the safety elements. It's not clear which are overlaps and which are not overlaps. And I think as you work through this with a draft and get a key and a glossary and things are sorted out, then I think it could be a very useful list. It's obviously confusing today.
Yeah. Appreciate it. Okay. All right. So with that, let me.
Can I make one comment?
Sure. Oh, I'm sorry, Nicholas. First of all, welcome. So can I go to Nicholas?
Go to Nicholas.
And I would ask,
My pleasure.
we're already 15 minutes over, so if we can keep our comments super short at this point. Because this was only meant to say this is a thing we're going to do in the future, not something to go into detail. So, but Nicholas, please make your comment.
Cool. Thanks so much. And I apologize for joining you late. Let me recognize that. I also appreciate the amount of work that went into creating the list. I found it confusing. So the relationship of the list to the safety element itself. I think that and I share many of the concerns that were stated. I'm not going to repeat them in the interest of time, but I don't think it is an item. I'm hearing that it's not an item to be voted on, nor is it an item that represents an action plan, but rather it's we all have this document in your desk drawer, got a desk drawer, that it's like of the things that you do if you actually find some money and you've got some time to do it. And I looked at that and I think, well, maybe this is that, and it's not entirely baked, but the things that you might think about doing at some point in time and clarifying its status at that level. Not that we're going to do it, but the interesting things to think about maybe doing at some point would be the way that I would think about it and feel comfortable with it. Maybe go there for good ideas and build it out, but it's both unclear what it is and whether it should be done and how much money it would cost to do it and what the bang for the buck is. But, there's nothing obviously wrong with it, but it just needs to be clarified what it is and where it is and how it might be used. That's what I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary?
My comment was going to be that it answered one of the things that I have been bothered by this whole process, the safety element process, because yes, there are people who haven't been able to speak to the safety element, who we are used to hearing from the safety element about the safety element, like the Bicycle Pedestrian and Traffic Committee, like the fire department, et cetera. This is really a process that's been going on for 5 years. This is the same old process. We've all commented and commented and commented and commented. We need to get a safety element done. And this repository is the opportunity to capture all the work of the last 5 years that isn't able necessarily to be incorporated in the safety element.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'd like to close 4A and move on to 4B, which is receive an update and provide direction on the 2026 draft safety element. So Sarah, I believe you got the staff report.
Thank you. Good evening, Town Council and Planning Commission. I'm Sarah Kors, the Planning Director with Town of Portola Valley. And I'm joined here tonight with Aaron Fannensteel from Atlas Planning. So we're very excited to be here tonight for a joint and also very unique study session, and very happy to have both groups here tonight for very important discussion around the 2026 draft safety elements. So we already kind of got a quick update from the Town Council subcommittee we have a short presentation we'd like to walk through to give an overview of the progress we've made so far. There's opportunity for public comment after the presentation, and then the rest of the time will be left for discussion, including questions and comments from both commission and counselors, and we'll be here for that. So at this point, I'm going to pass it off to Aaron.
Thank you, Sarah. Next slide, please. So let's just briefly touch on how we got here. As I believe it's Councilmember Hufty, how you indicated we've been doing this for 5 years. I have been a part of this process for a vast majority of that. Right around the end of 2023, this project kind of took hold, but prior to that, a lot of work was done. We had a lot of studies. We wrote a couple of drafts. There was a lot of feedback and input, and then things went on holds. Staff around me has changed. I haven't changed that much since we started this process. A little grayer though, thank you. But we're back. And this was really, again, prioritized by the council that you wanted to get this back on track. And I'm sure it wasn't just the council. I'm sure a lot of people want it back on track. So that's what brings us here today. And the draft that we provided is really just that. It's a draft. Our proposed timeline at this point is the rest of this month is open for as much feedback as possible. So tonight is not the only night that we get feedback. We want to make sure you have plenty of time. We wanted to also set the tone for what it is that would help us the most in getting that feedback, so that way we can help focus your efforts. We know you're busy. Both Sarah and I have sat on the other side of the dais as planning commissioners. We understand what that job looks like. We are not crazy enough to actually sit on that side as council members, no offense, but you know, we understand what you have as far as constraints. So this is the time frame that we've laid out, with the intent that by July, we'll start looking and evaluating at all the feedback that we received. We've already started looking at a lot of what's already come in, working closely with a lot of the external agencies that should be reviewing this, like California Office of Emergency Services, CAL FIRE, and the California Geologic Survey, with the hope that we could be back sometime in September and October for final review and approval by the commission and council. So let me just briefly say what a safety element is not. So this is not a document that focuses on immediate actions. Yes. Oh, next slide. I apologize. I'm doing it on my computer. So this is not a document that focuses on immediate actions. Safety element, if we go to the next slide, it's a mandatory chapter of your general plan. There are 7 required chapters that you can see on the screen. And then there's 2 additional required chapters depending on the conditions within your community, whether or not you would qualify. These chapters focus on long-term actions that can help address town safety needs. There are required pieces to it, like background information, maps, and then policies and actions. And this chapter now requires a little bit more update than some of the others because of the legislative mandates that have come down. Now, if you go to the next slide or just click the next button, what you'll see is you have all of those chapters and then some. So the ones highlighted in pink are the additional elements that you have created as part of your general plan. That is perfectly acceptable. You have to have the bare minimum, which is those 7 at least, but you have the freedom to make as many elements as you want. Don't often recommend that you go that route. But every community can do, address the needs of their community, whatever way they see fit. And this is how it came out when you put your last general plan together. Next slide. So let's talk a little about what does a safety element do? This is what the government code says, that you need to have a plan that protects the community from unreasonable risks associated with seismically induced surface rupture, ground shaking, flooding, tsunami, slope instability, wildfire, etc. The 4 on the bottom, those are not specific hazards as much as conditions that you also need to help address. The interesting thing about that is 3 out of those 4 have actually been superseded by new legislation and new mandates that have come down. If you go to the next slide, why are we updating the element? 1, because you're now required to. When I say you're required, there is no statutory penalty in the way that you have penalties for your housing element not being up to date. But there is legislation that indicates by certain dates and through certain triggers, you need to update your safety element. In 2006, AB 2140 went into effect. This is a voluntary item, but it's a very, very large, it has a very large financial consequence if you don't do it. We have opted to integrate that into your safety element. In 2014, wildfire hazards were required to be addressed. This is when the wildfire hazard maps basically started to trigger CAL FIRE review of safety elements. In 2017, climate adaptation and how the hazards within your community may be impacted by climate change were required to be addressed. That's SB 379. 2018, this is when the legislature connected housing elements and safety elements together. 2019, 2021, and 2022 is when evacuation analysis requirements went into effect. SB 99 focuses on the single ingress, egress, and constrained parcels. AB 747 and 1409 looks at an evacuation assessment and capacity, safety, and viability of your circulation network. And then in 2028, on January 1st, AB 2684 goes into effect, meaning you have to address extreme heat as part of your safety. So this is the main culprit as to why we have been trying to update the safety element, and we're here before you working with town staff as well as all of the appointed and elected officials to make sure that the safety element meets those statutory requirements. Next slide. So your element as proposed really has three main sections. The safety element overview is really about your purpose, the relationship to other elements and plans within your general plan and some other plans that you may have created, as well as how the element is organized and the focus for the community. The next main section are hazard evaluations. Basically, what are the hazards of concern? Again, looking through the lens of what does the government code require. There are safety elements out there that you could address every single hazard you're most worried about. I will tell you the vast majority of those do not protect a community any better than an element that is meeting the statutory requirements. And then safety goals and policies, which is really the toolbox that town staff will be relying on and commission and council will be using to ensure that projects that are being proposed meet the standards that you have set as a community. Next slide. So what we need from you. This is something that we've discussed with staff. You know, here tonight and moving throughout the rest of this month, it's really about receiving that feedback from the public, from appointed elected officials, from interested parties. We want to then identify the changes that are necessary to meet statutory requirements. We also anticipate there will be changes that we may need additional direction from council on that are beyond those required changes. And then ultimately get this plan and this element ready to have it reviewed by CAL FIRE as well as other agencies. So we provided this, you know, how should we focus? If you look at those three sections, when we look at that first component of the safety element, have we missed official plans or references to relevant documents that you would be concerned about or want to get connected to the element? We've also seen a lot of feedback already that there might be too much detail, and we're happy to go ahead and start to minimize some of that detail. There are ways that we can do that. So we really want to make sure it structurally works for the community. We went a little bit more versus less because sometimes communities like to see a lot of the detail. If yours doesn't, perfectly acceptable. At the end of the day, I walk out the door and you're stuck with the document. I don't want you to be stuck with something that you're not happy with. When it comes to the hazard evaluations, we need to know if we've used incorrect information from official and reputable sources. So my friend Doug said something happened 2 years ago is not a reputable source, unfortunately, unless Doug actually has a scientific study or some sort of analysis that they've done that has been vetted by the town or by another government agency. So we want to make sure that what we're relying on is good quality information. If there's something we have missed, we want to make sure that it can be identified. Part of the reason why we are going to send this out to other agencies for review is so that they can also help us with that. And then The goals and the policy section is really about, is there a policy or action that's missing or one that causes concern? Especially if there's one that's causing concern that may cost time, money, staff hours, and you want to make sure that this is the right decision for the community. So those are the types of ways that your feedback will help us the most. Next slide. So the next steps for tonight was to open things up for public comment. I know that was part of the agenda, and then bring this back down to both council and commission for questions and discussion. At this point, we are done with the presentations. Happy to answer any clarifying questions and up to the mayor on how you would like to proceed with public comment from here.
Thank you, Aaron. So I'd just like to start with clarifying questions. So are there any clarifying questions on the presentation? And we'll get to a more fulsome discussion. Doug, do you have anything? Ronnie? So just sort of shake your head if you don't have anything and we can move on, but Karen?
I have a lot of clarifying questions, but it might be more useful to make them as comments.
Okay, great. Then why don't we wait?
What is LHMP section 2140? You said it was a big deal and I don't know what it is.
Apologies. Do you need me to go back to the slide or is it okay?
No, just tell me.
The local hazard mitigation plan is a voluntary document that the city has adopted. You've actually adopted the annex to the multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan that San Mateo County prepared. So San Mateo County and a bunch of the participating cities and towns in the county all went in together, and you now have one of those. We call it an LHMP, but in your case, it's actually an MJHMP. That's the acronym that.
Oh, that was referenced in the document. Okay, same thing. For years, we went back and forth on fire maps. Which fire map was actually used? What was the source of it?
The latest fire hazard severity zone map that was produced by CAL FIRE and released.
Okay.
Last year.
Now, when you ask us what, for the background, what might be missing, I don't feel like I have any point of reference to make any comments. So how would you suggest we react based on an inability to understand what we don't know?
So I think the biggest thing that I would suggest, if you feel like you don't know, if you read that section and you feel like it makes sense, then that's perfect. If you feel like I'm confused, that means that if you're confused and you sit behind the dais, people will be confused. Yeah. If you can highlight that, we're more than happy to make sure that we can deconflict any of that confusion.
Yeah, I mean, this, in my last couple of clarifying questions, derived from that, which is there's no time for us to see it before it goes to the state. You're going to take all of our comments. There'll be a lot of comments we can make, but there's not another go around so that we can double check. There's nothing that's obviously missing before it gets submitted to the state. If I understand that correctly, and that's what your slide said, then what is your experience on backing up? Like, if once it's submitted to the state and all these other authorities, if we say the cost benefit of that isn't reachable for us, are we locked and loaded? Because that'll help frame the comments you hear tonight. Like, if we have to, if we're not sure, err on the side of get it out and we can add later, because there's a lot in here that I see that I'm uncomfortable with. So how do you suggest we frame that discussion?
As I think I was explaining this to Sarah earlier today as well. We have gone through this process with CAL FIRE on 3 San Mateo County elements that are actually going to the Board of Forestry next week. And so we're relying on a lot of the work that went into those to inform what recommendations we're providing to Portola Valley as well. The challenge you're going to run into is, you're right, as you start to review this, if you are concerned, then how do we rectify that concern? The proposed schedule that we have, we believe has enough time in it to accommodate some of that. But again, that was staff's proposed schedule. That doesn't necessarily mean that we can't modify the schedule to accommodate some of the concerns of council and commission.
Judith, may I ask a clarifying question on your question and answer? Were you talking about that other little sub-study that you were asking about, or the element it's? Because
The
my
whole element.
understanding is the element is going to be rewritten and is coming back to the,
Not before it goes to the state
before it goes to state.
or the authorities that review it and inform, and then it comes back. It will come back, is my understanding. But
Correct.
if it goes out beyond Portola Valley, in my view, we're locked and loaded. You cannot back up. If you back up at that point, then we're against safety. So I want to understand exactly how to frame this out. If I have concerns about the cost benefit of something, should I advocate tonight to take it out and we can evaluate it and add it later on the theory that they'll be happier if we add something later? Or, you know, what is practical?
Did you want me to address that now? Because I know it
But
sounds
this
to
is
me
a
like.
study session, so I don't understand how you go from a study session to submitting something without coming back to your agency. I'm sorry, Judith, but I'm trying to understand the same thing you're trying to understand.
Yeah, I mean, we're aligned on the question.
Sarah?
So I'll reference a little bit where back in fall of 2025, there's direction from town council, including budget and funding, and ultimately a contract with consultants to work on a very specific scope to move the safety element through adoption. So within that scope of work, it was identified to do this study session, to hear feedback, and to have this joint study session to address comments. However, if there are comments or things that we receive that might trigger more substantial changes, then there could be an opportunity, but it would change the timeline as well as the budget and scope of the project. If we find that there are more significant revisions, then there's an opportunity to do another public review draft. So that was written in the scope of, depending on how conversations happen. I think there is an opportunity to still potentially come to planning commission during this draft, during that time period of external agency review, where if there's other feedback that we can get before, and then before it comes through through the adoption process. But the idea too, as well as going back to the timeline, is that this has been happening since 2021, and that the plan you see before you addresses all the previous comments that we have received. Ones that aren't in the plan may have ended up on a safety and resilience list, but the ones that should be in this draft safety element have been addressed and are there. So this plan, building on the previous version, building on previous comments and feedback gotten, and is the best kind of approach that we're putting forward to you guys for feedback.
Yeah, and please don't take my questions as criticism. They're really not intended. I have to do my job. You've done yours and you've done it well as far as I can tell. So I want to be very clear on that. But you didn't answer my question, which is if I want to propose to take something out, or like, what is the best use of time for me to do tonight?
For tonight, I
Yeah.
think if you have specific comments or concerns about like a policy or an action, I flag those.
Okay.
And even if it's not, I want to dive into it. These are the ones that I'm most concerned about. Then if you want to follow up with, here are some of the specifics regarding those concerns, that might be the most efficient use of everyone's time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Judith, Mary, clarifying questions?
Yes, I specifically wanted to ask about fire following earthquake, and why that shouldn't be presented as a separate hazard, as being unique to Portola Valley, not unique, but our greatest hazard, and that it should be a driving force in our safety element, not just a suggestion maybe on a adjunctive list.
Well, I can't speak to what it may be on any other list, because I just want to also clarify too, we have not been part of this safety.
Right. No, I'm specifically asking, my question is, how much trouble is it to add another section? Because we have two kinds of fire. We have urban and we have wildfire. And we have another kind that has to do with earthquake, that we all know that you talk about those hazards, but nowhere does it say specifically what we do about when we have a big earthquake and nobody knows what's going to happen next.
So oftentimes what we try to do in all types of hazards planning is don't propose going down rabbit holes of the what ifs on top of each other. So when we talk about a hazard, we try to break it down to its core component. We know that fire is a big concern. We want to make sure we can address fire. We also know that earthquake is a big concern. It's very, very logical that the two of them together are an even bigger concern. And I think we can recognize that. What I caution a lot of communities is for them to say, well, I'm really worried about a traffic accident that turns into a hazardous material spill that turns into evacuation, right?
Okay.
And so what we want to do is we want to break our elements and the components of our hazards down to their kind of core components. So that way you can easily add them up as you're going through the emergency management planning process. Because what's best suited for the fire after an earthquake hazard is for you to actually have an annex to your emergency operations plan that talks about after an earthquake, what are we doing specifically as an organization? We can definitely put a policy or two in, but you already should have the building blocks with the earthquake and with the fire policies. And if we miss something that you're concerned about from an earthquake and a fire
I
perspective,
don't think you're answering my question.
okay, so then.
How much trouble would it be to add that?
Oh, no,
that element?
I've already answered that question. It's not difficult to
Thank
add
you.
more information or context about that, but trying to create a whole entire hazards discussion on that specific thing, I would not recommend. So adding a discussion under earthquake that we have to be concerned about fire after earthquake is something that we can add to the element. If you want to also identify in the fire section, one of the largest vulnerabilities for fire is fire occurring after an earthquake, we can definitely add that to the element. If you want to create a whole entire new section, that's probably a little bit more work because now we're getting into that scenario planning that safety elements were never designed to do.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'd like to remind people it's almost 6 o'clock. Let's try to keep this section just to clarifying questions. I feel like we're starting to dive into kind of process. So if we just keep it to questions about the presentation, we're going to come back. You can still ask questions. This is the last chance to ask questions, but let's not sort of use all of this time up. So Linda, you had any clarifying questions?
I have a clarifying question. I have oodles of comments, so like you, I'm anxious to get to that. But you made a comment to the effect that this is not an action document. How do you read the state code that requires us to put implementation measures together? Those are actions. Those are specific actions.
Yes, an implementation measures are actions, but that's not an action that you can do tomorrow in something. Like putting a padlock on a fence and making sure that that gate cannot open or close, I can do that tomorrow and somebody is a little bit safer. The implementation actions in a general plan were never designed to be something that you could take on tomorrow, check it off and move on, because we're talking about larger systemic issues that you have as a community, understanding your hazards and then understanding how do you solve the problem associated with those hazards. So
I understand, but I think that's a much different thing than what you said to say that this is not an action enforcing document, because those implementation measures are necessary.
Oh,
in
I
dozens of
completely agree.
locations, and those are specific
Put
actions.
the implementation actions in. I think maybe I misspoke and what I was trying to
Thank you.
illustrate, that this is not immediate action. It's not something that happens immediately. It will take time.
Well, no planning general plan element happens immediately, so that's why
Exactly.
it was particularly disturbing. Thank you. That's my only comment.
Thank you. Ellen?
Great, thank you. I do have a couple of questions. For those folks who, who are super busy, I didn't see an executive summary type situation in the front or any type of, quick and dirty thing, something that people could read in their 3 minutes situation.
Most of the time, general planning elements do not have it.
Okay, that was what I wanted to know. Thank you. Next question. In terms, I don't, about the impact of sea level rise. I don't see anything in here about our wastewater infrastructure that is on the San Francisco Bay that's cited in the San Mateo County Sea Level Rise Vulnerability Assessment of 2018. It's the Silicon Valley Clean Water Wastewater Treatment Plant. Was that because it's not in the town boundaries? Like,
So oftentimes what we really are balancing is what do you have control over versus what you don't have control over. But I think we can reference that sea level rise is still a concern because of infrastructure that the town relies on outside. So I think that's a great thing you could add.
great, thank you. And also just to be clear about Councilmember Hefty, or excuse me, Vice Mayor Hefty, what, in terms of the cascading effects, I take it that we don't have cascading effects because of the rabbit hole situation. So fire with an earthquake, flooding, you do reference flooding with an evacuation route, but are those all usually saved for the annex crosswalk situation?
That would usually be, you would want to use that from an emergency planning perspective. However, we have incorporated some text in the past that talks about how hazards have cascading effects. I think it's very, very appropriate to put an add something as well.
Great, thank you. And then last question, I noticed that quite a few of the maps weren't, it said would be updated. Could you explain that situation?
We're waiting on some additional data from the town geologist. Apparently they were going through an update as well. So we wanted to time it to make sure once their maps were fully updated, we could then incorporate. The data shouldn't, or the map shouldn't change significantly, but we would just wanted to make sure that there was a footnote that there's potential for that.
Okay, great. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicholas?
Yeah, Eric, 3 questions. Are the elements that are included in here meant to be self-executing? There are words like enforce, ensure, that are command things that need to be done. And that creates legal obligations both for residents and also creates an obligation and potentially a duty on the part of the town. And so if they're not performed, then there's a question of what that means.
Yes.
Is that language meant to be self-executing?
The policies and actions when they're town responsibility or town is trying to oversee or prevents or promote a condition, we're trying to use the right language to make sure that that happens, right? We will often have a policy that says don't put homes in the floodplain. So we want to make sure that you're enforcing the flood regulations to make sure the homes don't get put in the floodplain. That policy should be kind of self-regulating. You would have essentially have somebody, submitting an application to the planning department and their home is smack dab in the middle of the floodplain. Well, you can then reference that policy basically does not allow us to do that. You need to move the home. So that's really the intent of how the policies are written, is really to help staff as well as appointing and elected officials when they're getting projects across their desks that are not meeting the standard. That answer your question?
In part. So there are examples in which it's to minimize risk or to limit the potential of create a low risk condition that are not that are discretionary in nature. And it says that the town shall do this and that the residents shall presumably comply. So it looks like kind of a ordinance kind of direction being included in am I reading that correctly? Or but words like enforce and ensure create specific obligations. They are executory.
Right, and so if we're saying enforce, hopefully we've captured that we're enforcing either an existing law that's on the books or in the code, or enforcing, state statute. And oftentimes what we have to do is we have to understand that we maybe misjudged on the right verb, whether it was enforced or promoted. And so that's partly what we also would hope, council members and commissioners, as you do your review, this doesn't mesh with the long standard that or tradition that we've used, where we're not enforcing this. This is somebody else that enforces it. So we need to now promote it. So, but yes, you're right. At some point, when you say a word like force, require, that is basically you've got skin in the game that you're making sure somebody's doing something or what they say that actually is.
So when you're using words, and I apologize for the time. So when you're using words like enforce, shall, require,
it's like law.
That should refer to us, that is law, but those are, that's regulatory language. But what you're saying is that should refer to a specific existing obligation and if it has this kind of more nebulous to create a low risk condition, without reference to any statutory, is that supposed to be, should we be identifying areas where you're using executory language without referencing a statute?
In some cases, you don't have to actually reference a statute to apply that policy as a rule, right? So
To apply it as a rule
a rule or a law or a requirement, right? So if you're not going to allow homes in the floodplain, you can have a policy that don't allow homes in the floodplain. You can then also reference your flood management ordinance, but you don't have to, not required to reference the ordinance at the same time.
There's language in here that seems to create obligations out of whole cloth.
There's potential for that.
And in that context, that seems like it's a self-executing direction that isn't in reference to any existing law. It may be a really good idea. I'm just trying to understand whether this, hey, Linda, please, respectful. Is the question is the language in here supposed to create new obligations on individuals and on the town?
In some cases it might, yeah. And those obligations may be backed by changes to state law.
So do we have, is there inclusion of costs that are associated with this?
Oftentimes the safety element will not include the costs associated with that, but that's partly why we wanted to have the study session so that we could help you all get up to speed on what's in there, and then you can start taking a look at it, because there are some policy ramifications that you'll have to take a look at as a governing body.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so I'd like to open it up for public comment, then we'll bring it back. We continue, again, this is a study session, so we're going to continue to have questions, discussions. But with that, let me go online. So the first one is Zoom user, which I think is still Dana.
Can you hear me? No?
I can. Well,
You
yep,
can.
we can hear
Okay,
you.
good. So, I mean, I hope the obligations change as we learn more. I mean, I went to the geology meeting the other night, and before we do anything, I feel like I need to understand what are the slip rates on the San Andreas Fault on the peninsula. Nothing has changed in years, and that needs to be studied, and we need to understand that for our evacuations. I still feel like we're in the total beginning of all of this. And I think that puts us in danger if we are not up to speed on all of this stuff. So here comes our own geology committee last week, who puts forward this talk, and it was very compelling and upsetting. So I hope that we look into all of this stuff. The geology committee. And I also think that the staff needs to hear from residents of the town because I don't think they have the institutional knowledge yet of what we understand about our safety. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dana. MJ? Go ahead, MJ.
Oh, okay. So first of all, Aaron, I think it's Aaron. If you could speak into the microphone a little closer, I was really having trouble hearing you. So my first question is, when is the safety element due? I think you said that your goal is to get it turned over by September, October, but is there actually a due date from the state?
So MJ, this is your chance to comment. It's not a question period. So I mean, if
Oh.
other commissioners or council want to ask those same questions, but from you, I'm just looking for your general comments.
Okay, so one comment I have is that to review the safety element as a Brown Act committee, the wildfire committee needs to put this on our agenda for next Thursday. So I put an ad hoc subcommittee together, but basically we only have 7 to 10 days to review 1,000 pages over 7 documents because I have also told them that they need to look at the San Mateo County LHMP, the Local Hazard Mitigation Plan, that is currently under review on the San Mateo County website. So I kind of feel that the fact that this was given to us with such a short turnaround is almost like asking for just a rubber stamp or complete ignorance from our committee. Another comment I have is that there are a ton of policies in this safety element. A lot of them are assigned to town departments and some aren't. I didn't understand why. And also I noted that only a few policies were actually assigned to responsible town committees. And I think it would be nice, we're here to serve you guys. And if you guys give us responsibility for some of these policies, we would take that on. So I wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Thank you, MJ. Anybody else online? All right, going once, going twice. All right, so we'll go to the schoolhouse. Anyone in the schoolhouse? Rita?
Thank you. Just a clarification, in referring to budget, are we talking about the cost of contractors to revise the contracts to the paperwork or implementation of the things that are on the list? I really hope that we have an opportunity, the different committees, the different residents have an opportunity to review the updated maps and updated information. When this process first started, that was during COVID. That was a different council. It was a different planning commission. There weren't AI companies. It was a different life 5 years ago. And, people keep referring to different meetings in the past. We even have, I think we're on our 3rd or 4th town manager. So it's different people. And I think we need to look at the current information that we have. And we've been promised that this was going to be done every October for the past 5 years. Yeah, October. It's going to happen in October and promised. And so it just seems a shame to rush it because it means so much to our town right now. There was a 7.8 earthquake the other day in one place, a 6.1 in Cuba that affected Florida. We're not prepared. And we were also promised that the safety element should have gone or was going to happen before the housing element. But instead, all the resources of the town were put in for the housing element. And there were lots of comments, and we could have saved a lot of money on the housing element if the safety element had come first. And my other comment is about the section 5 that's talking about the storm drains. I've been part of a lot of the budget discussions on Zoom or in person, and we're behind on getting that done, that mandated item done, because we don't have the money. But here it is in the safety element saying that we're going to do it. how are we going to sign off on things that we say are important to us that we're going to do, and we can't even do them on a regular basis? So I really hope that we take the time to review the document, have an opportunity for our committees and current residents, because a lot of residents have changed in the past 5 years, and help them understand why this is important. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Right, anyone else in the schoolhouse? Kim, please.
Good evening, everyone. So like Rita was saying, new staff,
Hey,
new
Kim,
people.
You might just introduce yourself.
Oh,
since
sorry.
Not everybody knows, especially people online.
Sorry, it's Kim Giuliacci, Division Chief and Fire Marshal with Woodside Fire Protection District. So when I came on the 2023 draft, and it's towards the tail end of my predecessor. And at that time, there was a lot of back and forth on the safety element back then. It went to legal proceedings, and a legal agreement was reached between Woodside Fire and the town staff to develop an agreement on a work plan. And it went to be called the work plan. 13 key approaches to fire safety and 7 requests of mitigations. And so with this draft of the safety element, I reviewed the entire safety element. I am happy to see the amount of progress, and it makes sense that you used the CAL FIRES, because in the language that was used, it made sense where it needed to. So it was nice to see that that was followed to some. But in Woodside Fire, we're very unique, and we have a lot more ordinances, and Woodside Fire has a lot of blankets that affect all of the district, not just a part of it, and it's more restrictive than state law. So I am submitting through the link that was provided, because I do have a long list of comments, because I did go over each of the 18 items. Some of the items were completely met in this redraft. Some of them are partially met. They just maybe need some language addition, some things that maybe were not met. So I will be submitting that for you all to review. I also have some recommendations on some rewrites, as well as there is some information in there that I found that was not accurate and maybe just needs to be revisited. So just wanted to let you all know that's been completed and will be submitted today with the link.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Great. Nan?
Safety element. I've been working on this for 4 years, since June. Can you hear?
No.
You can't hear me?
There.
Oh, okay. So I've been working on this since June 2022. It has been 4 years. I hope town council members and planning commission members that you agree with me that this is a document that's more than just check the boxes and turn it into the state to meet statutory requirements. This is a document that should be controlling what the town does to keep itself safe. To me, it's much more personal than just satisfying the state laws and, putting in all the requirements. Okay, that said, I think that this draft in 2026 reads much more smoothly than the 2022 draft. So thank you for that. It's much, much more readable. I like it better. It's generally, the organization is better. It's clearer. I think a lot of that comes from taking the third level of detail, the implementation actions, out of the document itself and putting them in the appendix. So that was a good call. I find that a lot of the comments we made in 2022 are in that list. So they're in the document, but you don't see them in the body. That's fine. For the geologic hazards section in particular, we've been going through it pretty carefully, and we found quite a few inaccuracies, misstatements, which we will point out. So we're going to make some detailed comments. We will note them and make suggestions for changes. One thing I will mention is a set of geologic maps, which I find, I know those maps intimately, but I find going from one to the other very confusing. And you mentioned the LHMP, the Local Hazard Mitigation Plan. That captures the seismic hazard of the town much better than CGS or USGS. So I would like to look in more detail and have more detail from LHMP in the safety element, in the seismic hazard section. For cascading hazards, yes, you mentioned it once, at least in geologic hazard section, but it's so important in this town because all we have to do is have a large earthquake. Oops, I've gone over time, sorry. Then we get a fire, we have to evacuate, we get landslides, we get liquefaction. It's a very real threat here, and it's sort of glossed over. And I would like to find a way to say more about that. I'm not sure how you do that.
So Nan, I'm going to have to ask you to stop.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else in the schoolhouse? All right. So with that, I'm going to bring it back to the council and the commission. Linda, do you want to, we've got roughly a half hour, so that means we have roughly 3 minutes per. Do you want to run through your commissioners?
That sounds good.
Thank you.
I'll go through them alphabetically, which means that we start with me. I've written nation's laws. I've written the nuclear waste laws that apply to this nation. They've all been challenged and they've all been sustained. I've written hazardous waste laws and nuclear waste laws. And my point is, this is so far away from anything that I would like to see go on our code that it's hard to know where to start. I have comments on every single page where I think the language has been sort of careless or inexact. And I think these are topics where you have to be very exact. There are some areas that are very exact, but I mean, for example, the first line says it's an affluent community. Unnecessary. Who decided that? Why did you include it? I can go to page, and these may be details, but it's a point that's made throughout the document. You have a page 37, a table that says hazard/safety risk. My eyeballs always pop open when I see a slash. It's a hazard list. I don't know why you called safety in there. It's just inexact. I don't know what the slash means. Just examples of situations like that. I'm going to have a bigger comment here. For example, I know the law requires you to mention military activities, and I can pull up the page, Moffett Field. I'm not sure that Moffett Field is still functional to begin with in any way that's relevant, but in any case, then you add another paragraph about, well, maybe Moffett Field would help us. To me, those kinds of comments make this very unfocused and very difficult for a user or the town or anybody else to evaluate it. Which brings me to my second comment. I feel like you've missed the boat in a few major areas. I just got back from a trip where we were on and off boats, and I think of how, when the boat's there and you step out and you hope the boat's not going to bounce away so you fall in the water. I kind of feel like you're close to falling in the water on a couple of things. The point here, when you write a law or you write a rule or you write a brief, is you figure out what your point is and then you make it. And you can make a paragraph. The lovely thing about a computer is you can write that paragraph. Well, we're a bunch of guinea pigs here in a town that's got earthquake, fire, every natural disaster you can imagine, with only 2 roads in and out. And we're like the guinea pigs that are rolling around on the little wheel, but we're not going to be on the wheel. We're going to be stuck on the road. So the thing that really gets lost here is the fact that the most important thing for this town is your job to educate, which is part of the safety element, and your job to inform, which is part of the safety element. But then your job to set the goals and the implementation measures really only focus on one thing. I'm over exaggerating to make my point, which is evacuation. So moving on just a little bit from that point, I love all the figures. but they all use a different base map. I can't even tell you where the town lines are. There's mistakes in the figures. I live in Portola Valley Ranch. It's not a county park. It happens to be private land, although other people might think otherwise. I think there's a failure to make really important judgments. Let's look, for example, at figure 2. And I will stop in one more minute, Craig, but I just want to get the point across that my points that I have on every single comment. Figure 2 treats the area, I think it's where Nicholas lives over there in the upper left, and the ranch the same way as it treats a cul-de-sac off of West Ridge where there's one house. If you were to talk about evacuation, you need to figure out how to get the 200 households at the ranch, which is 20% of the town's population, and these other ones over there off of Portola Road, out of town. That's a whole lot different from getting 2 people who live on a street that's the only house on the street. So I think that the failure to kind of do a more detailed analysis here, to me, is a missed opportunity. And then the final point I will make is that putting all these definitions in here are really nice, but you haven't used incorporation by reference. You haven't used appendices. Who needs to have all these definitions? What you really need is to get to the guts of it, which is your evaluation and your. And I'm out of time, I know, but I want to paint that picture. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. That was so.
That was
Hopefully, you'll keep your. Yeah, that was your 5, and you're supposed to have.
5 minutes.
Right, you're supposed to have 3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're down.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're down to 3. So if you could.
Ronnie will be next.
I did send some comments to staff late last night. Did those make their way to you? Is that the best way to send it?
Yeah, I already reviewed your comments and I appreciate the detail that you provided.
Okay, great. So, yeah, I guess the main kind of policy one I wanted to raise was this policy as 3.2, which is about construction in a fault zone setback, and specifically the San Andreas fault zone. The policy after that, 3.3, is about construction in other fault zones, I think not outside of San Andreas. And 3.3 kind of allows for construction when there's, studies and mitigation measures, et cetera. But 3.2 in the San Andreas fault zone seemingly like completely disallows construction. And I believe that would be a significant change from what we currently have in place. And, we do have properties that are like completely covered by sort of these setbacks. And so I don't know if you want to briefly respond. Is it possible to be
I
more
read your comments and I agree that there is a little bit of ambiguity. One of the things I want to do is I want to take a look at the previous element that that's currently adopted, just to verify that we weren't reusing language. We may have repurposed an existing policy, and that might be where there's that incongruity. The other thing too is we also coordinating with the town geologist and making sure that the town geologist is comfortable with language. So we'll bring up your comments as well with the town geologist, just to make sure that we're capturing that. Because I do agree with what you're saying. It seems like we're using a different standard when one standard probably is more than adequate, but we want to verify with the town geologist.
Okay. Okay, great. Yeah. So the main comment is, I think we want to disallow unsafe building, but if there are studies and mitigation measures, I think that we should, accommodate that, since we do have many faults running through the town. That was kind of the main substantial one. I did, so many of the policies, like in 3.5 and in 5.6, are identified as being part of the Public Works Department. And maybe I just don't understand what our Public Works Department does, but to me, it seemed like they were outside of the scope of what I understood them to do. Like, for example, kind of almost negotiating across utility companies, Woodside Fire Protection District, neighboring towns, et cetera, maintaining development standards. So yeah, I guess maybe just review if the Public Works Department is really the right agents or.
Yeah, planning and I are going to take a look at those comments, and then we'll also touch base with Public Works.
I'm sorry, but I'm got a gun to my head, that's 4 minutes.
That was three. Veronica, can I ask that you just put up the timer? That'll, I think, help everybody through. Right, and then next.
Ronnie, Doug, going alphabetically here.
I will go under my time.
Thank you.
I just have a general question that I think goes similar to Linda this seems daunting to me for the town to accomplish all of this. And so my general question is, how does this compare to the minimum that the state requires? And then what is being added on top of that, because it's unique to our community? And as then it relates to the implementation actions, it feels to me like there should be some prioritization of these, because I think the chance of a flood is a lot less than a fire. And so maybe that's where we should be spending our time and directing our resources, or maybe that's not a good example, but you get the idea. We as a community should decide on what our priorities are and realize that we have a limited set of resources to get those done. And that should be reflected in this document somehow.
And if I'm just clarifying, when you say it daunting, are you talking about the scope of all of the goals, policies, and actions that are in the element, or the entire element itself?
The goals that are within the element, which then translate to Craig's list, which then becomes even bigger.
Yeah. And sorry to laugh when you said Craigslist. I went to
Sell everything.
But to answer the question from a priority perspective, the safety element is agnostic when it comes to priority, not because one hazard is more or less important than the other, but because we want to give you as many tools as possible. What we want you then to be able to do as a community is that once it's adopted, you then decide which of the tools you want to pull out and start using the most, because you have the greatest need. So with that, we're trying to give you as many ways for you to help your community with all of the various issues that we've identified. And then on an annual basis, that's when you're working with all of the town departments on what are some of the priorities. And they're going to then look at the general plan implementation actions to back up and reinforce those priorities with, oh, we have an action for this. We're implementing this policy or action. You know, and that's what the safety element is usually designed for. It doesn't mean that your community has to follow that. If you want to do something different, I know you have plans for an additional list or some other things. You have the wherewithal to do that. So, but the safety element in and of itself is not intended to go ahead and start prioritizing things for you, because we also know that communities' issues change on a regular basis. So the prioritization needs to come outside of the element and needs to come as part of that annual process of upkeep to the element.
Okay.
Alphabetically, Nicholas, you're next.
So building on those points and reverting back to the mandatory language, there are very many examples where the town shall do things, shall and will ensure, will enforce, placing obligations on the town. But to your point, these aren't necessarily prioritized. But if there's a mandatory obligation, and if the language isn't as precise as it might be or could be, it feels as though they're not policies to be implemented, but there are directions that we must take. But as you said, we don't necessarily want to take all of them because they may not be priorities. But if the language says that we shall do it or that we shall enforce it, it seems to cut against that. So I found that confusing. I also felt that a lot of it felt very bureaucratic, and that's, it's coming from a land use and environmental attorney. But there's operation and maintenance agreement that shall be enforced for vegetation management. Really? So we're going to have for every new project or remodel, we're going to have an O&M agreement that is enforceable. So without description of what these things are and what the enforcement mechanism. This feels very, very, very prescriptive. And
Some
prescriptive.
of it absolutely is prescriptive, if I can jump in. Part of that, especially on the wildfire section, is because CAL FIRE is looking for a lot of, they're asking for a lot of new requirements being incorporated into general plans as part of that CAL FIRE review process. So like that operations and maintenance item that you're identifying, that's a CAL FIRE thing. What they want to make sure is that you don't have a developer who comes in and says, hey, I'm going to build this development. We're going to do all this landscaping. Oh, and by the way, yeah, we forgot that we're not going to have set aside any money to actually maintain it. And so then what happens is, because you don't have an operations and maintenance agreement, who gets stuck with the bill when that is overgrown and you're being told that it needs cut back? So that's the purpose behind that policy, is that CAL FIRE has learned over the years, by not having that requirement on their own land, that they want to start seeing a lot of cities in California that are under their program to start to incorporate that in as well, because they've been burned as well.
So they have been burned. I would just point out that rather than having prescriptive language or proscriptive language, that one could have adopted ordinance or consider adopting an ordinance to ensure the long-term sustainability and vegetation management to address fill in the blank, rather than to have a mandatory new bureaucratic element that is, using executor language, in a general plan.
And the problem we run into is, unless that ordinance already exists, and we haven't seen the comments from Woodside Fire Protection District, maybe they already have something that we could rely on. If we don't, you now have a gray area where you now basically have something that you would want to enforce, but you have no way to enforce it if you don't have a policy in your general plan to allow you to.
The general plan, respectfully, and I'm mindful of the time,
Yeah, thank you, Nicholas.
says that would be of the form, adopt a ordinance that does something,
Yeah, we can definitely, I mean.
rather than saying that this thing exists and the town shall implement it based on the GP itself.
It's an issue of the time lag if there's a concern about.
I think we need to move on.
Sure.
Karen.
Yeah, my comments actually link Nicholas's to Nan's, and that I also found, and I sent you 11 comments and questions earlier. So I hope you have those. And
We've reviewed.
I will just go through these for the community here. Because I found the language also confusing, in that I wanted to know, are we going to explore these particular things? Are we going to actually, are we or are we not going to ever have an evacuation? Are we or are we not going to explore widening Alpine Road? I know that would cost a lot of money, but I think that we need to consider that. And I don't think that should be on the other list. And it could be not necessarily required, but we should explore these things. Another thing that would not be that expensive is TFRAs, temporary fire refuge areas. And I know that the priority has, would explore that with us. And that would be in the cascading disaster, that if we had an earthquake, the roads are closed, they're somewhere safe. If the fire goes out for the community. Do we have a sufficient reserve fund that if the roads are broken, that we have enough money to get them fixed very quickly? Home hardening, expansion for both this building, have we cleaned up the town center itself? What about businesses? And this very small minor thing, but are the sewer pump stations, will they support a flood? Or are we going to have a sewer issue? So these are all like, I'm not saying that we should necessarily do all these things, but I have no idea whether or not we are going to explore them. And I don't think that should be on the safety and resilience list. So I'll leave my comments at that.
Thank you. One of the things you did wrong, and then I'll close up our comments, but I see Karen has a minute left. one of the things that I found very
But I
frustrating.
would say you guys
You've
use two
made,
extra minutes, so.
you've made Stanford's properties our problem. And my initial comment about us being guinea pigs here, surrounded by problems. We're surrounded by property we don't own and we don't control. Mid-Penn, Stanford, all your stuff about water and creeks and the lakes, that's all on Stanford property. And they've done a lot of stuff on there. So you've raised a lot of questions that you don't need to raise, or you need to raise in a different way. Thank you. Respectful of time. Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry.
All right. So now I'm going to bring it back to the council for comments. So Helen, why don't I start with you?
Sure, thank you. A couple of quick comments. First, the military at Moffett does still exist. We get our reserves are there, for instance. You get folks in camo around Mountain View, for instance. That's just a side note. In terms of sending it to the other committees, I'm very concerned that we have been working on this for 5 years. Obviously, this is, as a council member, I'm one of the newer members on this body. So this is my first bite at the apple. And I don't want to rush this, but the town has been working on this for 5 years. And I am very worried about scope creep and extending the cost. I appreciate that staff has left this open for a month for public comment. I appreciate that this body is meeting with the planning committee. So, I am very worried about scope creep. I would like to get this plan done, because then it allows us to apply for other grants that would help to keep us safe. Because, for instance, as we go out for a grant for the evacuation route, that they will ask on the grant application, is this named in a document in your safety element or a plan, right? And so I want to personally, I am worried about trying to continue to take this elsewhere at the other committees. So I just wanted to be on the record for that. Basically, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, right? And I appreciate having all of your eyes on this document. I really do appreciate, I love the idea of the temporary fire locations. That was forgotten. I appreciate, some of the verbiage that, that would help potentially to make sure the tense is in the correct place. But I did want to, make sure that hopefully we can move this document forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Mary?
Speaking of the devil.
Document, am I the devil?
No.
Oh, there they
the fire
are.
trucks are coming through the parking lot.
Aha.
Call them, Kim?
Are they coming to get you? Well, I have a question that I maybe should know the answer to, and it's been the thing I've been pursuing in this is what the obligation of the safety element is, and what the safety element obliges the town to do in terms of quantifying the number of cars, people, disabled persons, animals, trailers, trucks, vans, etc. I know we have a list of temporary workers, but the people who are actually here and who have to get out, I feel there's a need to have those numbers, and I don't think we have them certainly accurately. Maybe we can't get them, but is that an obligation that the state is putting on us?
It is not an obligation. No.
It's not at all. Okay.
No, because again, the safety elements for all people in the town. So by us not quantifying, you've covered everybody.
Okay, animals.
It's for
everybody, everything.
For the town's resources, right? And residents, businesses, animals, absolutely.
Well, I will go. I think these are the 8th graders, by the way. They actually won't hurt us.
Say that. I don't-
I don't have one anymore. Okay, so the primary thing that I want to get back to is the unique situation of our risk, our wildfire risk following earthquake, and why that's important and why, again, I don't want to be the person using the example, but we did have a Loma Prieta earthquake. My children were 1 and 4, and it was very terrifying to have a major earthquake, to be told you had to stay there, and to know perfectly well that fire following earthquake is the number one thing, and nobody answering any kind of emergency response. So I really feel, we were basically told we had no electricity, no water, no way to take care of ourselves, and we couldn't leave. Okay, so that's fire risk, and that's real. And I have found that by far the biggest hazard I've ever faced. And I really think that we owe ourselves having this in our element.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Again, I don't think incorporating language into the element is not a problem. If there's specific policies that you think would be helpful as well, we are more than welcome to
Yeah,
incorporate.
it's all about education. It's
Sure.
it's knowing that you're not alone and that you actually have to go help everybody else and have them figure it out.
For sure.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mary. Judith?
Hey, I'm going to speak, do not answer. I'm taking my full 3 minutes. It's a great start. I feel strongly it must come back to council at a minimum and likely the planning commission and council, because we don't know what comments you're going to get. We don't know if they're going to be consistent, and we most importantly haven't had a lot of the policy discussions I feel are critical in order to send something to outside authorities. So I want it to come back. I do want it submitted sooner rather than later, but done right. So I'm not for eons longer. We have to figure out, pick a point in time where we're ready to go, and life will continue changing. The state will continue legislating. There's nothing we can do about that. We got to get something done, but we're close. We just need to do it right. I would in the future like to see what is required by state law per your discussion with Commissioner Targ versus what is a policy decision that we need to contemplate and weigh in, because there's no point in us debating. If it's required, we can work on the language. All right, so then moving on to some of the general comments, and I have a couple of anecdotal examples, but I have more and I can separately send in comments. One is some of the items seem at odds with the housing element, restricting on-street parking, setbacks and fire hazard zones, that kind of thing. And I don't know if that's correct or not. It's a question for you to think about. There's a lot of policy questions in here. Creating new developments outside of the fire hazard safety concern areas. Well, good in principle, but we've got a housing element coming up in 4 years. Are we locking ourselves right now into developing in areas that might not be on balance the right ones? It's a valid question. There are things that are ambiguous. CWPP, I don't think is defined. These are things that we can easily take care of, but what does to ensure something mean? To me, it means to guarantee it will happen. I don't think have the budget to do that. In certain respects, the cost benefit analysis is the policy decision, but there are things about removing invasives or dangerous plants in the right of way. Where is that? Is it along the evacuation route? No, it's somewhere in addition to that, because it says including the evacuation route. We can't be spending money on clearing everything to be safe. We have to make sure the evacuation routes are taken care of. There are private owner concerns. I think if we're imposing assessments, we got to be careful to have those discussions. Scope creep, there is some invasive species language that doesn't seem safety oriented. And then the requirement to enforce. We always have a problem with enforcement in this town. We don't have, we almost don't have a sheriff to help us enforce things. So it's a real question on how to rephrase some of that to be something we could, thanks.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Judith. Okay, so I wanted to thank you for putting this together. And I know it's a ton of work. I have 5 general comments. The first one's pretty minor, but the purpose has an order of sections and then the TOC has a different one. I really would like to see those line up. And I sort of feel like the purpose one felt like the right one. And the TOC kind of felt like maybe that's the state version, but it didn't really feel like it matched the town. The next thing is the point that Commissioner Targ was getting at, which is this new obligation. I mean, I really have a concern when I look at this. I can't tell whether we're creating sort of soft ordinances indirectly. Like it's just really hard looking at this document, which then leads me to sort of my third one, which is sort of reviewing this before it goes to the state agencies. I agree with Judith. I'd like to see somehow highlighted, maybe it's color coded, but what are policies that are council discretion that we need to decide on versus what are requirements that just have to be there for various state reasons. So I think that that's going to be important because again, if we have substantive changes and it's already gone out to the state agencies and it comes back, I don't even understand the process of does it have to cycle back around? Like how many cycles do we have to do? So I'd rather just cut that off ahead of time. The other one is I do want to be mindful of budget. This is Sarah's been working hard to stay within this budget. So Sarah, I think you're probably going to have to come back with whatever additional budget you think you need to do this based on the comments. So I think that basically covers where I'm at. I would like to encourage everyone, including all the committees, to get your comments in. I personally would be okay if you extended the deadline for comments, but I'm going to leave that to staff. But the important thing is that everybody get their detailed comments in. And, if Commissioner Targ, if you can go through and point out the things that are, like these are obligations that need to be discussed, the more we can help the consultant identify these things quickly, the less money we'll spend on the consultant trying to figure it out for himself. That would be great. On the other hand, Aaron, I've worked with you some in this process. I really value your time and expertise. So I just wanted to say thank you for all the effort that went into this. And I'm looking forward to seeing the next round. Okay, so with that, it is 6:53. I'm going to call for a motion to adjourn since the council gets a little breathing room before we start a 7 o'clock council meeting. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much for a productive study session.